in the face of mounting Western pressure to criticize Russia, and after the United States warned that circumventing sanctions could have serious consequences. India has used the emphasis on sovereignty and territorial integrity to dismiss claims that it has linked itself with Russia. When Lavrov met with Modi to brief him on the situation in Ukraine, including continuing peace talks, Modi underlined his appeal for an immediate end of bloodshed and expressed India's readiness to contribute in any way to the peace efforts. Earlier, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo stated that, if India joined Russia's central messaging system, SPFS, to buy Russian crude and weapons, it would be very disappointing. The UK Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, sent a more diplomatic message, saying that, while the West would prefer India to accept the sanctions, it will not put pressure on sovereign nations to change their minds. So, when Lavrov arrived in India, he was quick to praise India's position on Ukraine, which he said was based on an understanding of the issue in its entirety rather than a one-sided view. And his counterpart, S Jaishankar, reiterated in their meeting that differences and disputes should be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy, as well as respect for international law, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of states. Lavrov also said that both countries continued to respect and accommodate each other's interests, and that both countries' foreign policies were founded on legitimate national interests. He also described India's foreign policy as independent and not susceptible to blackmail. The Russians, for their part, have been emphasizing that China, India, and other countries have not joined the West in penalizing Moscow. And, after Lavrov visited China this week, Beijing said it was more determined to develop ties with Russia. Also, Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's prime minister, remarked that the Ukraine crisis had strengthened the Russia-China-India alliance. Lavrov also called for cooperation with China under the RIC mechanism to promote equity in international affairs. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that Russia will utilize non-Western currencies more in trade with India and other friendly countries. Backing the rupee-ruble payment method was also discussed by the two nations. Lavrov expressed optimism that India and Russia will avoid the artificial barriers caused by international sanctions on Russia, and that Russia will be ready to deliver any items that India needs to purchase. Referring to Russia being shut out of the SWIFT banking system, Lavrov said, Russia's central bank had several years ago established a system for the communication of financial information, and India had a similar system, which is called RuPay. He said, we began to shift away from utilizing dollars in our relations with India, China, and many other countries many years ago. And it is clear that more and more transactions would be done through this system using national currencies and skipping the dollar, euro, and other currencies. According to people familiar with the situation, the two parties are considering pegging their trade to a third currency, in light of the ruble's recent volatility, and employing banks that are mostly outside the international financial system. According to the sources, there is also a system in place for making payments for military equipment. He also added that military technical cooperation with India will also not be affected by the sanctions, and that Russia is open to new agreements in defense based on mutual interests and balance of interests. He said, friendship is the key word to describe the history of India-Russia relations. Lavrov also praised Jaishankar for his words, mentioning a multipolar world and emphasizing the need for India to diversify its energy sources. While responding to a query about India accepting Russia's offer of discounted crude oil, Dr. S Jaishankar said, European countries are among the largest purchasers of Russian oil and gas. He made the comments during a conversation with his British counterpart, Liz Truss, who was in New Delhi for a day. Jaishankar defended India's determination to get favorable terms on energy supply. He said, in the face of global market instability, Europe acquired 15% more oil and gas from Russia in March than it did in February. Dr. Jaishankar said, I am confident that, if we wait another 2 to 3 months, and look at who the major customers of Russian oil and gas are, we will find out. I believe the list will be similar to what it was previously, and I believe we will not be in the top 10. The comments came after US Deputy National Security Advisor Dalip Singh warned that the US did not want India's energy imports from Russia to accelerate rapidly.